All right, so Pete, we're going to start with you here. President Trump trailing in the polls all across the country, especially some of those battleground states that he needs to win to win again. He's also running low on money. He's pulled some of the advertising out of some of those states. But we all remember the polling in 2016, and he still won. So what, in your opinion, is his path to victory right now?
Well, Ellen, his path to victory goes through the state of Pennsylvania, and he got some very good news, actually, this morning when the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette did something it had not done since 1972, and that's endorse a Republican for president. Think about that. Last night, you had the president. He was outside of Pittsburgh in Butler, Pennsylvania, had 57,000 people at a rally up there, so that is a huge number, and the president's hoping that the base obviously is there and is strong, but the base has grown. We know how razor thin those margins were in 2016. In Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, a combined about 80,000 votes won the president the election. The good news is for him, he can lose Michigan and Wisconsin, win Pennsylvania, and still get to the 270 that he needs if he holds a lot of those other battleground states that people are talking about. Georgia, possibly Florida and Arizona. But if he does all that and wins Pennsylvania, he's getting a second term, Ellen, and that's right now what the president's looking for.
Interesting. Okay, question for Sly. Joe Biden has kept a pretty low profile on the campaign trail. He hasn't held a lot of big events. Could that hurt him? And Mayor Sly, has he done enough to win?
Well, first of all, I don't think holding big events is any sort of a barometer of anything except that you want to hold big events and have people stand out in the cold and miss buses and freeze and go to the hospital because you want people to grovel and make a bunch of noise and say hello to you. So the size of the event is irrelevant. There are 1,000 ways to communicate. We're doing it every day. I don't have as many face-to-face meetings with as many people, but I'm communicating with more via Zoom and other electronic means. So the real issue is who's communicating better and what are they communicating. One thing I learned when I was in office is that the negative voices are generally the loudest, doesn't necessarily mean they're the majority. And despite my friend Pete's prognostication that that Pennsylvania is the key, Pennsylvania is only part of the key. The president has to win Florida as well, and Texas can't go blue on him. So at the end of the day, his path to victory is a lot narrower than that of Joe Biden's, and Joe Biden has done enough to win.
But wouldn't you say, Sly, that on that note, what has Joe Biden done to convince us that Texans are going to show out and flip that state blue, outside of not being Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, Joe Biden doesn't have to convince you that. The people who are running in Texas are the ones that are convincing you that. And if you look at the polling there, you'll find that it's closing the margin a lot. And it's not only been closing the margin just in this cycle, but it's been closing the margin for the last 4 or 5 election cycles. Mm-hmm. It's a gradual thing. A lot of people moving into Texas from other places because of the cost of living, which is, of course, driving the cost of living in Texas up. But at the end of the day, there's change in Texas. Frankly, there's change all around. There's 2 very viable Democratic candidates in Georgia, for example. When's the last time that happened? So the fact that the Pittsburgh Gazette endorsed Donald Trump just means there's another newspaper that's endorsed somebody. It doesn't mean that that's going to translate into a victory.
It's still Biden's job to flip those states. And that's what I think the polls are representing. It could be possible, but still, he's got to flip them before we even have the conversation on whether or not he's going to swing through the Sun Belt.
Well, as far as I know, he's still ahead in Pennsylvania and a whole lot of other places, too. About 8 points across the country, as I recall. At the end of the day, I think Joe Biden's in a pretty good position to win this thing. I pray that he will. And at the end of the day, Donald Trump is running scared, and it's pretty obvious that he is. The man, if he spent as much time actually running the country as he does at his golf clubs and on campaign trails, we'd be in a lot different shape.
So, guys, okay, so we don't know if we will have a winner on Tuesday night. It's something that has happened in the past that we've lived through before. But what are your thoughts on possible chaos come Tuesday night or the weeks to follow? We'll start with you, Pete, and then Sly.
I do not think we're going to be sitting here on Wednesday morning with an answer to who the next president is going to be. Does that mean that there is chaos? It doesn't mean it has to be chaos, right? We can hopefully count the ballots here and not have chaos. But I'm not really convinced that that's going to be the case just because of the divisive nature we find ourselves in. And you see cities all over the country are boarding up shops because of the anticipated chaos. And that's a real concern in some of these urban centers.
You know, I agree with you, Pete. I don't think that we're going to know the winner on Tuesday night, maybe not even on Wednesday or Thursday. But one thing I do know, it's a sad day in this country when we sit around anticipating that there could be widespread chaos as a result of an election in this country. That's never happened before, never should happen. We've always been a country that has told the rest of the world that when your elections are fair and free, you shouldn't have any problems. So does the fact that we're anticipating problems indicate that we're having problems with people understanding the value of the elections and our leaders putting elections in their proper place? So I think it's sad for us that we have to talk about chaos, but I think there's a chance that we will have it.
All right, thanks, guys. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Sly, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. It's just sad that, windows are having to be boarded up for potential chaos.